The air in the Clark Group auditorium crackled with the electric hum of anticipation. 100 lenses, like the compound eyes of some great insect, were trained on the empty podium. The collective murmur of the press corps was a low beast, hungry for a soundbite. When Terry Clark emerged from the wings, the room erupted in a blinding strobe of flash photography. He moved with an unhurried grace that belied the immense pressure of his position, his charcoal suit tailored to perfection, a silent testament to the power he wielded. He was less a man than an institution, the formidable CEO who had just orchestrated one of the most aggressive corporate takeovers in recent history. He offered a sterile, practiced smile, his eyes sweeping over the sea of reporters. After a brief preamble about quarterly growth and market expansion, he opened the floor. Hands shot up. The questions were predictable, softball inquiries about strategy and synergy. Then, a sharp voice cut through the nose. Emily Allen, a rival journalist known for her predatory instincts. "Mr. Clark," she called out, her tone honeyed but her eyes sharp. "Your business acumen is legendary, but our readers are equally fascinated by your personal life. You remain the city's most eligible bachelor. What, exactly, does a man who has everything look for in a partner?" A predatory quiet fell over the room. It was the question everyone wanted to ask but hadn't dared. Terry's smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered in his dark eyes. He leaned into the microphone, the slight movement commanding absolute attention. "An interesting question," he began, his voice a low, smooth baritone that carried to the back of the hall. "But I'm afraid your information is outdated. I'm not a bachelor." A wave of shocked whispers rippled through the auditorium. Fingers flew across keyboards, transmitting the breaking news. Before they could fully process it, Terry delivered the coup de grace. "In fact," he continued, his tone coolly deliberate, "I'm in the process of getting divorced." The room exploded. The frantic clicking of shutters was deafening. Emily Allen's triumphant smirk was visible even from the stage. Terry held up a hand, silencing the chaos with a single gesture. "My soon-to-be ex-wife," he said, the slightest pause infusing the words with a calculated weight, "preferred to keep our marriage private. A personal choice, of course." He let the statement hang in the air, a perfectly crafted piece of bait. Perhaps he felt the CEO of the Clark Group wasn't quite worth showing off. The implication was a masterstroke of public relations, subtle, venomous, and utterly effective. He had painted himself as the wrong party, a man whose success was a source of shame to his phantom wife. The press, smelling a massive story of love, secrecy, and betrayal, was in a feeding frenzy. Hours later, the city lights of downtown glittered like a carpet of shattered diamonds outside the penthouse apartments, floor-to-ceiling windows. The sprawling space was a monument to minimalist wealth, cold marble floors, Spartan furniture, and an echoing silence that no amount of money could fill. Daisy Davis stood before the window, her reflection a pale ghost against the vibrant cityscape. The news had broken an hour ago, her phone buzzing itself into a coma with alerts and messages. The sound of the front door opening made her flinch. Terry strode in, shrugging off his jacket and tossing it onto a sterile white armchair. The calm, controlled CEO from the press conference was gone. In his place was a man simmering with a tightly coiled rage. "My mother called me," he said, his voice dangerously low as he loosened his tie. "She was crying. Apparently, she had to learn about her son's divorce from a gossip columnist." "Was that part of your plan, Daisy? Humiliate my family along with me?" Daisy didn't turn around. She kept her gaze fixed on a distant skyscraper, its peak shrouded in mist. "Our families were the reason for this arrangement, Terry. I assumed you would handle your side." "I was handling mine. Handling it by saying nothing, by letting me walk into that press conference and drop a bomb that you knew would incinerate everything. You're the one who chose to announce it that way," she replied, her voice flat, devoid of the emotion he was trying to provoke. She finally turned to face him, an expression a mask of weary composure. You made it a spectacle. You wanted to control the narrative. Before he could retort, the chime of the private elevator echoed through the apartment. Moments later, Fiona, Daisy's mother, swept in, her face a carefully constructed mask of maternal concern. Daisy, darling, Terry, I saw the news. I'm just horrified, she breathed, rushing to Daisy and enveloping her in a cloud of expensive perfume. She gripped Daisy's arms, her painted nails digging in slightly. Oh, my poor girl. I always worried this was too much for you. A man like Terry, it takes a certain kind of woman to stand beside him. Don't you worry, dear. Some people are just meant to focus on their careers. Each word was a poisoned dart wrapped in velvet sympathy. A subtle reminder that, in her eyes, Daisy had never been good enough. Terry stepped forward, his jaw tight. That's enough, Fiona. This has nothing to do with Daisy not being good enough. It was an arrangement. You can't force a connection that isn't there. His defense was double-edged, simultaneously protecting Daisy from her mother's venom, or also laying the blame for their failure squarely on their lack of chemistry, her lack of it. Daisy felt the familiar wave of exhaustion wash over her. She was a pawn in a game between her mother's social climbing and Terry's corporate legacy. It doesn't matter anymore, she said, her voice cutting through the tension. She looked directly at Terry, her gaze unwavering. The contract is ending. Just have your lawyer send the final papers to my office. That's all that's left. Is that it? Terry challenged, a flicker of something unreadable hurt, frustration in his eyes. 2 years, and it just ends with a courier. What else did you expect? Daisy shot back, the first crack appearing in her armor. It was boring, Terry. You said it yourself. You said living with me was like living with a ghost. She took a step back, creating a physical and emotional chasm between them. So let's let the ghost disappear. The Monday morning buzz at TL magazine died the second the glass doors swished open. A pair of crimson-soled stilettos clicked against the polished concrete floor, a sound as sharp and deliberate as a metronome setting a new, foreboding rhythm for the office. Every head turned. Daisy's stomach plummeted. Emily Allen stood framed in the doorway, a vision in a form-fitting ivory pantsuit that screamed money and influence. Her blonde hair was a sleek, architectural bob, and her smile was a weapon, aimed with precision. She surveyed the room as if it were a kingdom she had just acquired, her gaze finally landing on Daisy's desk with a chilling sense of triumph. Daisy Davis, Emily purred, her voice carrying effortlessly across the suddenly silent newsroom. She strolled forward, the scent of expensive Jo Malone perfume trailing her like a declaration of war. Long time no see. She leaned against Daisy's desk, her manicured nails tapping a light, dismissive rhythm on the surface. I heard a rumor you and Terry were on the rocks. I thought it was just vicious gossip. You two are always so perfectly matched. The feigned sympathy was a shard of glass. Daisy felt the blood drain from her face. Emily, she managed, her voice tight. What are you doing here? Oh, didn't you hear? Emily's smile widened, all teeth. I'm your new co-chief reporter. Your stepdad was so welcoming. He said the team needed a fresh perspective. Before Daisy could process the dual betrayal, her colleague Sarah leaned in, a whisper, a venomous hiss. Fresh perspective. My cousin in HR said. Terry Clark pushed her in, made a call directly to the board. They're saying he's making room for her at the top. The words hit Daisy like a physical blow. Terry, of course, it was Terry. She felt a familiar, nauseating wave of inadequacy wash over her. She was just the placeholder wife, a convenient arrangement, while Emily was the one he'd move mountains for. As if on cue, a junior reporter's phone pinged loudly, and her gasp cut through the tense air. Oh my God, look at this. A screen was shoved in front of Daisy's face. The headline from a popular gossip blog was stark and brutal. CEO Terry Clark's grand welcome for ex-fiancée Emily Allen. Below it, a high-resolution photo showed Terry at the international airport arrivals gate, looking devastatingly handsome in a tailored suit. He was handing Emily a ridiculously large bouquet of 99 red roses, his smile reserved only for her. They looked like a scene from a movie, a perfect reunion of soulmates. The article detailed their long history, painting their past engagement as an epic, tragically interrupted love story, and her return as its glorious second act. Daisy's existence was relegated to a single, dismissive sentence. Amidst his rumored separation from his wife of 2 years, Daisy Davis, the world narrowed to the glowing pixels of that photograph. It wasn't just the public humiliation, it was the sharp, piercing heartbreak. A friend had once warned her, "A man never forgets the woman he was supposed to marry." Daisy had dismissed it as cynical nonsense. Now, the words echoed in her mind, a haunting refrain to her own foolishness. He had never gotten over Emily. He had never even tried. The rest of the day was a blur of forced professionalism and thinly veiled pity from her colleagues. The final insult came late in the afternoon via clipped phone call from her stepdad, the magazine's publisher. "Daisy, there's been a change of plans for the Lamford Tech Conference. The keynote speaker is pulling out. I need you to go down there and re-secure an exclusive interview with Terry Clark. He's the main investor. You can't be serious." Daisy choked out, gripping the phone. "Send someone else. Send Emily. Emily is overseeing the new quarterly report. You're the one with the established relationship. Don't be unprofessional. Your flight leaves in 3 hours." The line went dead. At the airport, Daisy watched Emily waltz past the economy check-in line, waving a first-class ticket. Terry insisted. She called out with a triumphant smirk. "He hates it when I fly coach." The flight was misery. The conference hotel in Lanford was worse. A flustered clerk at the front desk stammered an apology. "Ma'am, I am so sorry, but there's been an overbooking due to the conference. Our system shows you and Mr. Clark are sharing the presidential suite." His assistant booked it as a couple's reservation. Before Daisy could argue, a deep voice cut through the air behind her. "It's fine. We'll manage." Terry stood there, his luggage at his feet, his expression unreadable. He took the single key card from the clerk and walked toward the elevator without another word, leaving Daisy no choice but to follow. The suite was opulent and suffocating, dominated by a single, colossal king-sized bed. The air crackled with unspoken history and fresh resentment. After a long, tense silence, as Daisy stood stiffly by the window overlooking the city lights, Terry finally spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "So, this is it. You file for divorce and immediately run to Caleb Reed. I saw the pictures of your little lunch, planning to merge the Davis media empire with his. Is that your next move?" Daisy spun around, her anger flaring. "This has nothing to do with Caleb. This has to do with us. With you and Emily. There is no me and Emily," he snapped, stalking toward her. "There is us. We are still married, Daisy." He stopped just inches from her, his presence overwhelming. "Tell me, is that why you're so eager to leave? Because I can't satisfy you? Because the CEO of Clark Industries isn't enough for you anymore?" The accusation was so crude, so far from the truth, that it left her breathless. "Don't you dare," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This marriage was a contract, and it's over." Was it? He cornered her against the cold glass of the window, his hands slamming down on either side of her head. He was close enough for her to see the flicker of something raw and desperate in his dark eyes. "I don't recall our vows mentioning an expiration date." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a husky, accusing murmur that vibrated through her entire body. "I remember the way your breath would catch when I touched you. I remember holding you all night. I remember you whispering my name in the dark. He searched her face, his gaze intense and wounded. Or was that the lie, too? Were you just playing a part? Daisy. His anger was a shield, but beneath it, his eyes betrayed a storm of regret and a desperate, aching longing that mirrored the one she was trying so desperately to kill. The office air, once buzzing with the low hum of productivity, was now thick with a toxic silence. Phones glowed on every desk, a constellation of small screens all displaying the same viral post from a top-tier influencer. Screenshots of Daisy's exclusive interview materials with Clark grew, framed by a scathing caption accusing Tia magazine of unethical practices. Her career was imploding in real time, and she was at the epicenter, my office. Now, Editor-in-Chief Aaron's voice cut through the whispers. His face, usually a mask of calm authority, was a blotchy red. Inside his glass-walled office, he didn't offer her a seat. He paced, running a hand through his thinning hair. This is a disaster, Daisy. A rookie mistake of the highest order. How could you let your materials leak? Daisy stood rigid, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. I didn't. They were on a secure server. This wasn't a mistake. It was a targeted attack. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone. Who was responsible? The influencer was one of Emily Allen's closest friends. A calculated, professional assassination and attack. Aaron scoffed, his voice dripping with condescension. Or an excuse. The board is breathing down my neck. You have one chance to fix this. Get another interview with Terry Clark. A better one. An exclusive that will make everyone forget this ever happened. You do that, or your entire team is out of a job by Monday. The threat landed like a physical blow. He wasn't just sacrificing her. He was using her team as leverage. The sting of betrayal was sharp, not just from Emily's machinations, but from the man who was supposed to be her mentor. Aaron was clearly terrified of Emily's influence, and he was making Daisy the collateral damage. Her jaw tightened. Fine. An hour later, she was standing outside the sterile, imposing doors of Terry Clark's office. Getting the appointment had been surprisingly easy. His assistant had put her through immediately, as if he'd been expecting her call. Terry was leaning back in his chair, a picture of infuriating calm as he watched the city lights flicker to life through his floor-to-ceiling window. He didn't rise when she entered. Here to beg for a second chance, Ms. Davis. His voice was a low, velvet smooth taunt. I'm here to request a follow-up interview to mitigate the damage from a malicious leak, she said, her tone clipped and professional. He swiveled his chair to face her, a slow, deliberate motion. A ghost of a smirk played on his lips. And if I agree, what's in it for me? He let his gaze drift over her, a slow, appraising look that made her skin prickle. Be careful. If you're not, I might just make a move on you during this interview. The provocative challenge hung in the air, blurring the line between a corporate negotiation and the deeply personal duel. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she met his gaze without flinching. Try it. You'll find I'm much more prepared this time. The re-interview took place in the same sterile conference room. Daisy set up her recorder, her movements precise, betraying none of the turmoil inside. She began with a softball question about a recent corporate acquisition, but quickly pivoted. Let's talk about the Clark Foundation's scholarship program, she said, her voice even. It was abruptly cancelled 2 years ago despite significant initial investment. The official reason was a budget reallocation, but sources suggest it was a personal decision. Can you comment? Terry leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. The smirk was gone, replaced by an unnerving intensity. The program's primary beneficiary was a university I had a personal interest in. There was an incident at the university gala, security threat. My team determined that my public association with the school, through the scholarship, created an unacceptable risk. Sometimes, the best way to protect an asset is to distance yourself from it completely. The project was terminated to ensure the safety of certain individuals. Daisy's breath hitched. The university gala, the night she'd found him disoriented in a quiet corridor, his drink clearly spiked by a business rival. She'd dragged him out of there, gotten him into a cab, and never mentioned it again. He had cancelled a multi-million-dollar project turn act she had resented as another example of his careless whims to protect her. Before she could process the revelation, the door burst open. Emily Allen swept in, a triumphant smile on her face. "Terry, darling, I was just..." She stopped short, her eyes landing on Daisy. The smile curdled. What is she doing here? Terry didn't even look at Emily. His gaze remained fixed on Daisy. "We're in the middle of an interview. Please leave." "But the roses you sent were so lovely," Emily purred, trying to assert her claim. "I assumed you wanted to celebrate." Terry finally turned his head, his expression glacial. "I didn't send you any roses. Now get out." He gestured dismissively toward the door, then added with chilling finality, "And for future reference, address her as Mrs. Clark. She is my wife." Stunned into silence, Emily flushed a deep, ugly red. As she spun on her heel and stormed out, her assistant, Ruby, scurried after her. Daisy, packing her equipment, overheard their frantic, whispered exchange in the hallway. "I told you to double-check who sent them," Emily hissed. "You made me look like a fool, but the card just said from your secret admirer." Ruby whimpered. "I thought it was from Mr. Clark." A romantic gesture, a wave of understanding crashed over Daisy, so forceful it almost buckled her knees. The roses that had appeared on her desk, which she'd assumed were a cruel joke from Terry to Emily, were from someone else entirely. The cancelled project wasn't a slight. It was protection. Piece by piece, the narrative of Terry's heartless indifference she had clung to for 2 years began to crumble, revealing a far more complicated picture. Fueled by a sudden, searing clarity, Daisy marched back to the Tia magazine office. She didn't knock on Aaron's door. She shoved it open. He looked up, startled. "The interview is done," she said, her voice ringing with newfound steel. She placed her recorder on his desk. "And so am I. What are you talking about?" "I know you're on Emily Allen's payroll," Daisy stated, her voice dangerously calm. "You used my team to pressure me. You amplified her sabotage, and you were ready to throw me away the second it served you. I will not be a stepping stone for anyone." She leaned forward, her eyes blazing. "I resign, effective immediately." Before he could respond, she turned and walked out. Back at her desk, ignoring the shocked stares of her colleagues, she opened the company-wide chat group. With a few sharp clicks, she uploaded a file. It was the full, unedited recording of Aaron's earlier threats, his dismissal of her concerns, his demand she fix a problem he knew Emily had created. The title read, "A Lesson in Editorial Integrity." Her phone buzzed with a new message, an official offer from NF Weekly, their biggest competitor. She typed her final message into the group chat. "To my team, I'm sorry it came to this. My next project will be at NF Weekly. I'll be leading a special investigative series. The first subject: the mysterious origins of a girl named Daisy Davis." She hit send, grabbed her jacket, and walked out of the building without a backward glance, leaving the ruins of her old life smoldering behind her. The air in the Davis family residence was thick with the scent of stale perfume and fresh betrayal. On the oversized television screen, red arrows plunged downward, charting the catastrophic fall of the Davis Group stock. Grant Evans, Daisy's stepfather, leaned back in a leather armchair, a smug predator enjoying the carnage he'd orchestrated. "The board is panicking, Fiona," he said, his voice a low, satisfied rumble. "They see the headlines. Davis heiress in messy divorce. Company stability in question. My offer to buy you out is starting to look very generous." Fiona, Daisy's mother, wrung her hands, her face a mask of practiced distress. "Grant, please. Think of the family I am." He sneered, his gaze flicking to Daisy, who stood rigid by the window. "I'm thinking of its future. Sign over your shares and I'll stabilize the company. Refuse and I'll let it burn." Daisy's voice was ice. "You'd destroy Dad's legacy over this." "You're using my pain as leverage," Grant laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Business, dear. Not personal." Before Daisy could retort, the doorbell chimed. A moment later, the housekeeper showed Terry Clark into the room. He moved with an unnerving calm, his presence sucking the predatory energy out of the space. He didn't look at Daisy, his focus entirely on the man in the armchair. "Grant," Terry said, his tone placid, "I hear you're selling your shares." Grant's smugness faltered. "What's it to you, Clark? Come to gloat?" "No. I've come to buy," Terry replied, pulling a tablet from his briefcase. He tapped the screen. "My legal team just transferred the funds to your account. A 20% premium on today's closing price. The deal is done." He slid the tablet onto the coffee table. "Sign the transfer and walk away." The room fell silent. Grant stared, dumbfounded, as the numbers glowed on a screen. Fiona's jaw hung slack. Daisy watched Terry, her heart hammering against her ribs. He hadn't come to save the Davis group. He had come to remove a threat. He was protecting her, again, in that quiet, infuriatingly noble way of his, without a single word of acknowledgement. He was everything her family was not. After a sputtering, Grant signed the papers and stormed out. Fiona rounded on Daisy, her relief curdling into resentment. "Look at the mess you've made. If you hadn't been so stubborn about this divorce." "Me?" Daisy's voice cracked. "He used our divorce, Mother. He tried to blackmail you, and you were considering it." "What was I supposed to do?" Fiona shrieked, her composure finally shattering. "Grant is your stepfather, not your flesh and blood. He has no loyalty to this family." Her eyes, cold and hard, locked onto Daisy's, "And neither do you. You aren't even my real daughter." The words landed like stones, shattering the very foundation of Daisy's world. Terry took a step toward her, his composure finally breaking, a flicker of alarm in his eyes. But Daisy didn't see him. She only saw the stranger wearing her mother's face. "What did you say?" "You heard me," Fiona spat. "The confession a weapon. You were adopted. A convenient arrangement to solidify an alliance with a family. I had something your father needed. You were a transaction, Daisy, never a daughter." The world tilted, the ornate room blurring at the edges. A transaction, her life. A carefully negotiated contract. She stumbled back, waving off Terry's attempt to steady her. She needed to breathe, to escape the suffocating weight of a life built on lies. Days later, sitting in a sterile research office, the pieces began to form a darker picture. A trusted friend from her journalism network had dug into the sparse records of her adoption. "It's not clean, Daisy," her friend said gently over the phone. "The orphanage caretaker received an anonymous, substantial payment shortly after you were placed there. And get this, records show your biological parents and the Davises moved in the same social circles. They knew each other." A pawn. She hadn't just been adopted. She had been moved from one square to another in a game she never knew she was playing. The cold, hard fury of a reporter on the scent of a story began to eclipse her personal devastation. This wasn't just a family secret. It was a conspiracy. She confronted Fiona again, not with tears, but with a reporter's notebook and the steel spine. Why me? Who were they? What did my father need so badly that he bought a child? Fiona, unnerved by Daisy's clinical detachment, refused to answer, retreating into a wall of silence. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. Terry's assistant, Ruby, met her at a quiet cafe. Her demeanor professional, but her eyes full of sympathy. Mr. Clark didn't want you to know, Ruby began, placing a folder on the table. He felt it wasn't his story to tell. But I can't watch what Emily Allen is doing to you and stay silent. She opened the folder, revealing a legal document. It was a letter from Emily's late father, a man Terry had respected, entrusting the care of his illegitimate daughter to him. It was his dying wish. He asked Terry to look after Emily, to ensure she was financially secure and protected. It was a promise of guardianship, Miss Davis, not a promise of love. Daisy stared at the letter. Every confusing interaction, every moment of Terry's strained loyalty to Emily, every time he pulled away from Daisy to deal with an urgent matter involving her rival, it all clicked into place. He hadn't been choosing Emily over her. He had been honoring a duty to a dead man, trapped by a promise he was honorable to break. His protection of her, of Fiona, of the company, it was his nature. He was a protector, burdened by the secrets of others. That evening, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Terry. My mother's hosting another matchmaking dinner. I'm not going. A familiar ache twisted in her chest. But it was different now. It wasn't the sting of rejection, but the quiet hum of understanding. Before she could reply, another text came through, a forward from Terry's mother. It was a photo of a smiling, beautiful heiress with the caption, "She's wonderful, Terry. You're missing out." The old Daisy would have shattered. The new Daisy picked up the phone and called Terry. He answered on the first ring. "Terry," she said, her voice clear and steady, a general taking command of her own life. "Tell your mother to stop. Tell her your future is not her decision to make." She took a deep breath, the words flowing from a newfound well of strength. "I'm going to find out who I am, and when I do, we can decide what our future looks like. Together, on our own terms." For the first time in a long time, the silence on the other end of the line didn't feel like a chasm between them. It felt like a breath, held in anticipation of what was to come. The crystal glass in Fiona's hand caught the sterile light of the chandelier, looking less like a peace offering and more like a weapon. A thin, bitter smile was painted across her lips, a grotesque mask of maternal concern. "Drink, Daisy. It will calm your nerves. We have so much to discuss." Daisy stood her ground, her spine a rod of ice. The house she'd grown up in felt alien, the walls closing in with the weight of 2 decades of lies. "I'm not drinking anything you give me," Fiona's mask cracked. "Don't be a fool. The Langleys are a respectable family. A new marriage will secure your future now that you've made a mess of things with Terry. My future. All yours." Daisy's voice was low, but it cut through the tense silence. The timid girl who had once craved this woman's approval was gone, burned away by betrayal. In her place was a reporter who dealt in facts, and the fact was, Fiona was not her mother. She was her captor. Fiona lunged, her desperation making her clumsy. She tried to force the glass to Daisy's lips, the clear liquid sloshing dangerously close. "You ungrateful child, after everything I've done for you, you'll do as I say." Daisy shoved her back, the glass tumbling from Fiona's grasp and shattering on the polished floor. "Done for me." A raw, incredulous laugh escaped her. "You didn't raise a daughter, Fiona. You groomed a commodity. A bargaining chip you could trade for status and security. Was I ever anything more to you than a placeholder for the child you could never have?" Each word was a precise strike, dismantling the facade Fiona had maintained for years. The older woman recoiled, her face contorting with rage and shock. How dare you? I dare because I have nothing left to lose. Daisy interrupted, her voice ringing with newfound clarity. You and Grant used me. You sold me into one marriage, and now that it's failing, you're trying to sell me into another. The game is over. From the doorway, a figure emerged from the shadows. Grant, his face ashen, wrung his hands. Daisy, please. Your mother is just upset. She's not my mother, Daisy stated, the words liberating. And you're not my father. You're just a pair of grifters who built a life on a stolen child. Just as Fiona raised a hand to strike, the front door swung open with a force that made the crystal on the chandelier tremble. Terry Clark stood on the threshold, his presence sucking the air from the room. He wasn't dressed in his usual impeccable CEO armor, but in a simple black Henley that did little to hide the cool tension in his shoulders. His eyes, cold and sharp as obsidian, took in the scene in an instant. The shattered glass, Fiona's enraged posture, and Daisy, standing defiant and alone. He moved with a predator's economy, crossing the room in 3 long strides. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He simply placed himself between Fiona and Daisy, a silent, immovable wall. His hand found Daisy's, his thumb tracing a steady circle on her skin as he gently pulled her behind him. Get away from my wife, he said, his voice a low, menacing rumble that promised consequences. Fiona scoffed, regaining a sliver of her arrogance. Your wife? The divorce papers are already filed. She's bringing shame to your name and ours. Terry's gaze didn't waver. It was flat, dismissive, as if he were looking at something utterly insignificant. The only shame in this room, Fiona, is you. He lifted his other hand, holding a thick manila folder. He tossed it onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy, definitive thud. This is a full account of Grant's insider trading, funneling Clark Industries intel to your shell corporation. It also contains sworn testimony from the private nurse you paid off 25 years ago. St. Jude's Hospital. Grant's face went from pale to ghostly. Fiona stared at the folder as if it were a venomous snake. And this, Terry continued, pulling his phone from his pocket and tapping the screen, is a live call with my legal team. They have copies of everything. So does the SEC, and so does every major news outlet in the country. Ready to publish the moment I give the word. He paused, his eyes finally locking onto Fiona's with chilling intensity. You will never touch her again. You will never speak her name again. Daisy is my wife, and I protect what's mine. The declaration hung in the air, absolute and unbreakable. It wasn't a statement of ownership born from an archaic contract. It was a vow. In that moment, Daisy understood the depth of his actions over the past weeks, the anonymous tips that saved her career, the resources that cleared her name, the quiet support that had felt like a phantom shield. It had all been him. Fiona and Grant crumbled, the architects of their own ruin buried under the weight of exposure. Their blustering denials died in their throats, replaced by the silent, suffocating terror of downfall. There was no escape. Terry didn't wait for the fallout. Keeping a firm, protective grip on Daisy's hand, he led her out of the house, away from the wreckage of a life built on lies. He didn't look back, neither did she. The drive back to their home was silent, but it was a comfortable, breathing silence. The city lights blurred past the windows, a smear of gold and white against the night. When they walked through their own front door, the space felt different. It was no longer a beautiful, sterile house they merely cohabited. It felt like a sanctuary, a beginning. Daisy finally turned to him in the soft light of the foyer, her heart a tangled mess of gratitude, shock, and a love she had long tried to deny. Terry, why? He cupped her face, his gaze searching hers, finally open and vulnerable. Because I was a fool, Daisy. I let pry, a ridiculous contract, and the ghost of a past relationship blind me to what was right in front of me. His thumb brushed her cheek, gentle and reverent. I fell in love with the fiercely intelligent reporter who challenged everyone, including me. I fell in love with the woman who showed more kindness to strangers than her own family ever showed her. I fell in love with you. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sorrow, but of profound, earth-shattering relief. The truth, her truth, was finally hers. She was free from the past, and she was seeing her future, clear and bright, standing right before her. I was falling in love with you, too, she whispered, a voice thick with emotion. I just didn't think I was allowed to. A slow, genuine smile spread across Terry's face, transforming his severe features into something breathtakingly warm. Then let's make our own rules. He took both of her hands in his. We'll finalize the divorce. We'll tear up that old, meaningless contract that our families wrote. Daisy's heart hitched, a flicker of fear momentarily eclipsing her joy. And then, he continued, his eyes alight with unwavering devotion, you and I will write our own. Daisy Davis, will you do me the honor of starting over with me? Will you marry me? For real this time? She didn't need to think. This wasn't an arrangement or a strategy. It was a choice. It was love. With a tearful, radiant laugh, she threw her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. Yes, she breathed, the word of promise for a future they would build together, on their own terms. Yes.